Hi and welcome everyone, this is David and this is the UHANS MAX 2, and despite having the name which resembles a foreign exchange student and looking a little bit like the Galaxy Note brother from another mother, this is yet another Chinese device. You can get these from GearBest, AliExpress among others, and this is quite a quirky device. You can see it's absolutely gigantic. We'll run through some of the features in a moment. So I used this for around about a week just after I used the Octa K3 that I reviewed earlier. And it's actually a pretty interesting device. I did get a lot of questions about it when I kind of saw it on my desk at work, or somebody saw it, it's like, wow, what is that? It is absolutely a real sort of showstopper when you kind of look at it first, because it's so huge. It does throw back to the Galaxy Note from years and years back. Obviously now the Galaxy Note 8 does have the same screen size, but obviously manages to put it in a much slimmer and more svelte body. I know they do have the curved displays with that, but with this, this is a real monster. So we'll sort of go through some of the specs and sort of tell you my thoughts on it as we go through the review. So first of all then, it's got a metal unibody with a metal back as well. These top sections here are actually plastic, the top and bottom, but the back here is metal, and so is the actual frame of the phone. Not sure if you watch him, do catch his channel, Alex over at Red Skull. Now I did ask him if it really was metal, because I was a little bit skeptical about it, because it does feel like plastic, it doesn't feel like metal. He said he put a little bit, a small scratch on the back, and it is actually metal, so I'll take his word for it. Thanks for clearing that up, Alex. If you haven't checked out his channel, please do. I'll put a link in the description. He has some really amazing reviews of all the cool and quirky Chinese devices that are being sold on the internet at the moment. So at the front, you've got a 6.44 inch 1080p IPS display, and this is a game of two halves. On the face of it, when you look at it, it's actually not that bad. I think the colours are a little bit washed out. No matter playing around with the actual screen option allowed me to get a really decent image with the display, and also blacks as well. When you've actually got the screen turned on, if it's black, it's more of like a dark grey more than black. It's certainly not as impressive as the Octa K3 display that I reviewed previously. So that is one thing you'll need to bear in mind if this kind of phone on your list to buy. So it's got a fingerprint sensor built into the front of the display, so it is actually a capacitive key, it's not a hardware key, which is nice, and it's decently accurate. I thought it was actually more accurate than the Octa K3 that I've reviewed earlier. Obviously with the K3, I'm not sure if the sensor was just like a rubbish roll. Well, this one is actually not bad. It's quite accurate, and again, it's quite comfortable as well, because obviously when you pick the phone up, it's kind of resting where your thumb would usually be when you pick the phone up, and you can just unlock and not have any problems with it. So yeah, another phone with a MediaTek 6750 Octa Core Processor. Again, like the Octa, it's got 4GB of RAM and 64GB of built-in storage. You can supplement that with up to 128GB SD card, and you can use that as internal storage using the Android adoptable storage feature. So you're pretty much spoiled for choice with storage. The 64GB is really generous, and the actual software on the phone, which we'll talk about in a moment, it doesn't actually use up a lot of the internal storage either. It's quite a light skin, so again, you've got plenty of available storage out of the box, which is really good. As seems to be the case with a lot of Chinese phones these days, we've got these dual cameras front and rear. These are 13 megapixel with a supplementary 2 megapixel camera, and the same is continued on the rear as well. As with most Chinese phones, I say most, I don't want to tar them all with the same brush, but the images are just okay at best. You can get a pretty decent shot in the right light, and when you go to close-ups on subjects, the images can, on the face of it, do look really good, but the secondary camera really isn't that much use, to be honest. I would rather, as I always say, one decent camera rather than two mediocre ones. I just don't see any point in having the secondary camera if it's not going to be any good. As I said in the K3 review, it's a Me Too feature, sort of copying the big brands, and I don't feel it actually adds any value in these. So if imaging is important to you, then perhaps don't consider one of these. Perhaps be better as a secondary phone rather than your primary phone with a good camera. So it supports Wi-Fi, and it's also got 4G LTE support as well. So I've used this with two networks in the UK. That's the 3G network, so it's on 3 and EE. Absolutely fine with both, no problems whatsoever. A good signal lock. It was no worse than using my OnePlus 3T. Call quality through the earpiece was absolutely fine. Never had any problems with anyone else at the other end complaining about them not being able to hear me, which is good. And yeah, the actual phone functions are really good. So I have no complaints in that department. So this runs Android 7.0 Nuggets. It's got no skin whatsoever over the top of it. It does have a couple of pre-installed apps from UHANS themselves. They can be disabled or uninstalled. There's no point in installing them because they're so unobtrusive. It doesn't really cause any problems with the day-to-day usage. I found the actual usage of the phone was absolutely fine. It was actually a bit more snappy than the Upitel K3 that I used before. That kind of hinged on like lots of animation when going through screens, which made it kind of feel like it was plodding along when you were navigating through different menus. With this, it's a little bit more snappy. The only thing I found was it did sometimes take a couple of taps on the screen to get some sort of response, especially when you've restarted your phone. You have to click in your passcode. It took a little while to register my presses on the screen, so that's something you need to bear in mind. Given the price, it's £140 in our money at the moment. I'm willing to take those sacrifices based on that. It's not it's not the most responsive screen in the world, but it isn't bad. That's the main thing. So it's got a 4,300 milliamp hour battery. Now I have put this to the test, so it lasted a whole day and a little bit more on one charge. But be aware that a large display does take up a lot of battery time. It's a huge display, and obviously if you've got the brightness cranked up, it is going to chew into that battery if you're doing things like playing games or watching movies. It's deceptively light. It's actually 245 grams in weight, so it's actually a little bit heavier than the Upitel K3 that I reviewed before. It doesn't actually feel as heavy because obviously it carries the weight better across all of the handset itself. It actually feels deceptively light. Obviously when you put it in your pocket, you do know it's there. It's absolutely enormous. I mean, if you look at the size of it, putting it against other phones is it just looks absolutely huge. These top and bottom bezels are quite big as well. Obviously necessary. They actually make good sort of resting places for your fingers if you're watching things on the screen like movies or if you're playing games. As far as port and connectivity goes, you've got a micro USB slot at the bottom. You do have two speaker grills, but there's only actually one mono speaker, and as does seem to be the pattern with the Chinese devices, especially the cheaper ones, the speaker is actually just mediocre at best. It's not actually that brilliant. It doesn't sound particularly sharp or dynamic. It's just tinny. And will do for casual watching, but it's not going to be something you're going to want to use just to listen to a bit of music if you're in the bathroom, what have you. It's just not that good. It does have a headphone jack, so 3.5mm headphone jack, as per most of the Chinese cheap devices that I actually use. It does have some good detail. There's not a lot of bass in it, but it's nicely detailed and it makes a good listen, but it doesn't go very loud. If you plug in a big pair of headphones, it's not going to be able to drive them that well, and that kind of spoils the experience a little bit. Even when watching movies, you don't get a really decent amount of volume. So if you're watching action movies, the sound isn't particularly dynamic, which kind of lets the side down a bit. The Bluetooth is good. I've used this in my car. You listen to a lot of music in the car. I drive back and forth to work about 50 miles every day. And a good companion. It got a good lock on the audio system in the car, and also with Bluetooth earphones as well. There's no problem pairing with them. There's no dropouts. It's no worse Bluetooth connectivity wise than my OnePlus 3T, which is kind of my yardstick at the moment as my daily driver. It doesn't have any USB on the go support as far as I know. However, the charging is reasonably quick if you use the included USB adapter. It does charge reasonably quick. You can get from 0 to 100% in a little over an hour, which is pretty good considering the size of the battery. Moving on to video, so it does record up to 1080p 30 frames per second maximum, and I did find good light again. Like some of the Chinese devices I've used, the exposure suffers. It doesn't really do well with changes in exposure, and it was decently smooth though, using it out on the roads. The best way to test a camera, I think, is when you just plop it in your car, stick it in the windscreen mount, and then it'll just record the detail. Lots of moving objects all at once. It's a good test of the actual image quality and the processing of the video. When you move to low lights, that's when things start to suffer, obviously, and it doesn't really look that good. Everything just goes really blurry, where the phone is struggling to actually maintain the frame rate in a low light situation. The actual day-to-day performance is actually pretty good. The actual gaming performance is not bad. You can run most games on high settings without any problems. Things like Asphalt 8, you will have to dip the settings down to medium, for example, to get any decent gameplay from it. And with it being a metal chassis, it does get quite warm when you're playing that. But with it being such a large display, it's so expansive when you're watching stuff. that it does make a real difference having this larger display on this phone. Similarly, watching movies as well. I've watched a couple of movies on Netflix. I've downloaded them to take to work to watch. And it actually looks really good. Again, there's some artifacting, but the actual impact of the larger display does make a difference, I think. And you know, I haven't used a display of this size for quite some years after the Galaxy Note from years back. So that does make a good difference to the actual user experience and the immersiveness of using this kind of display. So that's pretty good. The fingerprint sensor we've already touched on, no pun intended. Again, it's decently fast and it does a good job most of the time. So would I really recommend this kind of phone? Well, I can and can't. I mean, the display is one of the things that kind of felt a bit let down with. On one hand, it's good for immersive content, for example, but I think the quality could have been better. The actual panel itself is a little bit of a letdown. They could have used a better display panel, but for the price, very, very hard to argue. If you want to give this to your kids, it's more or less like 7-inch tablet size. And I think for the outlay of £140, it is good value. You get a lot of features for your money. And for that reason, it's a good recommend as a secondary device, but I'm not so sure as a primary device. If you want to take a punt, by all means, you do so. If you haven't got a lot of money in the kitty and you really want to buy something with this kind of size screen and you just want to use it for playing games, make the odd call and sending text messages, then it'd be absolutely ideal for that. So that's been my quick overview and review of the UHANS MAX 2. If you liked the video, please don't forget to hit the like button and also subscribe for more videos coming soon. I have got the Berrigan Mix 2 review coming shortly. That's actually a very special Chinese device, one of the best I've ever tested. I won't spoil it too much, but yeah, that is a really good phone and there will be a review of that coming very, very soon. If you've got any questions, then I'll see you in the comments down below. But for now, thanks very much for watching. My name's Mr. West and I'll catch you guys later.